Hey guys, Chris Clothier here with another episode of The Grind. Thank you so much for joining me again. Look, I'm going to start right off the bat and say I appreciate all the comments that we received, the emails that you guys have sent, whether it's the thumbs up or the hearts or the votes or whatever it is on different social media platforms. I appreciate the support, appreciate everybody that's out there listening, and listen to the stories and the kind of the shares that we have. I've got a new one for you this week, and it comes directly from some of the feedback we've gotten. You know, I shared the story of my, kind of the lessons that you don't learn in business school, you don't learn in entrepreneur school, specifically the lesson of getting vulnerable, the lesson of kind of being willing to know where you're at, being willing to admit that there's some things that you don't know, being willing to open up to others that may have traveled the path you want to go down so they can help you. It's vitally important if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, if you want to be really successful at almost anything in life, you have to model and follow people that have been where you want to go. This week, look, I'm gonna share with you the fact that focus is vitally important if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur. You have to be able to focus on what it is you're doing. You cannot be scatterbrained and all over the board. And I happen to know this through lessons, through myself, through my own personal story. I'm going to share with you what happened once I became successful in my grocery arbitrage business and began to generate some real profits. I shared last time that that's what helped kind of propel me into real estate. That's what helped me begin my first portfolio. It's also what would eventually lead to my downfall. And it wasn't the success I was having in groceries. It was the lack of focus I had in either pursuit. I was not able to focus on being successful in the grocery arbitrage industry and a successful real estate investor. I began to kind of spread myself thin. I failed to follow some super basics about real estate investing that make you successful, and ultimately just about crashed and burned, but I didn't. Let me tell you that on the front end. I didn't. I got about as close to the ground as you can go when you're flying in that plane that you don't want to be. So I'm going to share that with you here today. Kicking right off out there at it. When I was successful at the grocery arbitrage business, I went from this 8x8 little cubicle office with no windows, single man office, could barely get around the desk, to suddenly I had the ability to move to a 3-man office, but only had one person in there. I had this big corner office with windows. I had, a credenza. I had a bookshelf, all provided by the office company. And it was amazing that I had all this room to spread out. My son could come visit me and color pictures at the conference table. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I had this measure of success as a business person that I was able to spread out a little bit. And now, mind you, I was still super focused on what I was doing at the time. About 3 or 4 years into my business, I was really growing and doing well. But during this time, I had become an accidental landlord. I know I've shared this story before, where I ended up buying my first property really quite by accident. And again, that may be a whole nother episode of our podcast. That's a whole nother episode. I'll come in and I'll show you and share with you how I bought my very first property. But once I bought it, I was hooked. I kind of had that bug in me. I was like, I want to invest in real estate. Now, mind you, I have to focus daily on my grocery business. And at the beginning, I was really good at it. I was able to come in every day, carve out my time in the grocery arbitrage business, make all my phone calls, make all the connections I need to make, track my business. I followed every single metric that I'd set off myself, from number of phone calls I was making a day to number of connections I had to the number of offers I was making on certain products. I was dialed in. It was really good. I began to, once I accidentally bought that first property, I began to think of myself as, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this. And so now that I'm doing well in groceries, why don't I take some of my money and begin to put it into real estate? And this was the first mistake I made. I decided to be both an active investor and a passive investor while I knew nothing about either one. So there's nothing wrong with actively investing in real estate and passively investing in real estate and having being an entrepreneur, owning your own job. I mean, I was the CEO of my company. But at this point, I'm doing $18 million a year in sales. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is I was really good at groceries and I understood it. I didn't know really anything about real estate. And I began to divide my time up into not only getting involved, but I wanted to be an active investor. So I was purchasing and trying to oversee renovations and the eventual sale of properties in Denver, Colorado. But also I was passively investing in properties back in Memphis, Tennessee. And I started buying houses actually from my dad. And this was while Brett was still in college. Memphis Invest as it exists even today was more of a concept at the time. It was kind of proving ground, I guess. We were trying to figure out whether it was going to work. And I had no interest in being involved in the business. I had my own company. But I was perfectly interested in being an investor. I wanted to own properties back in Memphis. It was relatively inexpensive to get started that way. And so the first properties I bought were actually from my dad. Now, we're all good at this point, okay? So I'm buying houses from Kent Sr. He's handling the renovation. He's passing the property management on to a third-party property management company that he had vetted. They manage his properties. There's no reason for me not to trust them because he trusts them. Well, as I continue down this path of trying to not only operate my company, but also purchase and oversee the renovation and eventual sale of houses in Denver, I'm going to meetups in Denver. I'm going to the real estate investor group meetings down there in Denver. I'm going to the Saturday sessions where you pay extra money to learn from somebody that's the expert with their 3-ring binder to sell you of all the how-to easy button, system to get started in real estate. I'm attending all of this, okay? You can kind of see where I'm going here. I'm starting to spread myself kind of thin, but manageable. What the catalyst for my almost epic failure was, as I began to acquire more profitability in my business, I began to put more time and money into real estate. And I was not educated enough in real estate. I wasn't surrounding myself with the 6 best investors I could surround myself with. I was instead had this feeling of invincibility. I thought that since I could do it in groceries, I could build this business on my own. I could move up from the 8x8 office in the middle of the building to the corner office with the windows. I thought I could do it in anything. I thought I could do that in real estate. I began to buy one house and then another house and another house from my dad, and I had this plan. My plan was I want 15 houses, okay? I got started by accident with number 1. Everything after that was intentional. And I wanted 15 homes. I had a 2-year-old son at the time, and I put every house I bought on a 15-year payoff, okay? Very disciplined. I'm going to pay this house off in 15 years. When it's owned free and clear, a resident will have or back then, it was the tenant, the renter. They will have paid everything off for me. I will have never suffered a vacancy. If I do, it's no big deal. I'll get it back occupied quick. I will make X number of dollars every single month. Pretty soon, it'll be more than I'm making over here in groceries, so I can pay myself back. And when he turns 17, I own these houses free and clear. That's his college fund. So the first 2 or 3 houses, those are all for my son. The next 2 or 3 houses, well, by this time, my second son was here. So those are for him. All the other houses are for me and my wife. One day we'll retire. We'll have a nice retirement fund set up. 15 houses owned free and clear. Put them on 15-year notes, buy them all fairly quickly. That was my plan. Continue to run my grocery business. I'm off and running. I'm making money in every single thing I'm touching. Then I'm going to buy houses, manage the renovation, eventually manage the sale of them, actively there in Denver, Colorado. Here's what happened. One day I look up. I don't have 15 houses anymore. I bought number 16 and then number 17 for my dad. And he would call me up and say, I've got another good house here if you want it. Yeah. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I've got this under control. I'll buy another one. Pretty soon, people began to see my name in the transactions and they began to reach out to me themselves. So now I've got somebody that I don't know that's reaching out to me saying, hey, I've got this house over here. It's right next door to the one you bought, you already own. I can sell it to you cheaper than what you paid for the last one. Do you want this house? I started saying yes. Then I started saying, well, I'll find somebody to do the renovations for me back in Memphis, Tennessee. I'll find somebody. I'll just hand this off to the management company over here. Pretty soon, I started getting more and more people reaching out to me saying, hey, I've got a great deal for you. Then the question came up, well, how am I going to finance all these houses? Because how do I put 25% down on all these purchases? Unfortunately for me, the time frame was 2006 when I was really beginning to ramp up. For any of you that don't understand what was happening in 2006, this was when certain banks, such as Washington Mutual, were saying, you seem like a good bet. You're making money over here in this other grocery business. I will give you as many loans as you want with zero interest and nothing down today. And I started buying houses with nothing out of pocket on interest-only loans. Now, if you remember what I told you, my plan was 15 houses. Before I knew it, I had over 50 houses. My plan was to put everything on 15-year notes. Suddenly, I'm buying houses interest only. My plan was always to put 20% down. That's how I would be disciplined. I work in groceries. I make money. I put 20% down. Now I'm buying houses with no money out of pocket. And the whole time I'm telling myself that I'm smarter than everybody else. I've got this figured out. I'm one of the few people that can buy houses with no money out of pocket, interest only, massive cash flow. I'm beginning to think that I am a really, really good real estate investor. Early 2007, I've got a house in Denver, Colorado that I expect to make a massive windfall on. And due to poor planning on the front end, due to poor understanding of the market on the front end, I've got a home that I expect to make six figures on that it's more likely that I lose six figures on. This is on a quick fix and flip. I've got over 50 houses that I own outside of my market that are passive, that I've got somebody else managing for me. I've got a grocery business that, while I've been paying attention to real estate, has slowly but surely eroded out from underneath me. The bedrock, the focus I'd put into that business has now been divided up into other avenues, other pursuits. And suddenly my active real estate is not going the way I expected it to go. I'm looking at a massive loss. Suddenly my grocery business is not producing the same volume of sales that it had been producing because I wasn't focusing on it. And I have what should have been a 15 property portfolio on 15-year notes that are all they were purchased properly. I put the right amount of money into. I owe less than the value of those homes. No matter what happens to them, they should be able to provide a positive income on a yearly basis. Suddenly I've got over 50 of them. And the interest-only houses, I still owe the exact same amount of money the day I bought them. When the crisis, the economic crisis hit in 2007, my grocery business took an even bigger hit. My flip property in Denver, we could not sell, and none of us were willing to take a loss. I had a partner on it. We weren't willing to take a loss on it. My passive portfolio is suddenly a full-time job because with over 50 properties, I'm getting buried by the amount of mail and paperwork I have to do to maintain these particular properties, and they're beginning to show signs of weakness because they're starting to have vacancies. And then poor craftsmanship on the work on the ones I began to buy from other people out there as I began to be constantly marketed to. Suddenly the work wasn't up to par. And suddenly I had homes that could not produce the revenue they needed to produce for me to be able to pay all of my bills on them. So now I have stress from three areas. I failed to focus on groceries, so it's producing less revenue. I failed to focus properly on the fix and flip I was doing in Denver, so now it is going to lose money. And then my passive portfolio, which should have been very tight, just the best 15 properties I needed that I wanted to own free and clear by the time my son turned 17, now has ballooned to over 50 properties. Many of them bought very poorly. Many of them bought without the proper due diligence. Many of them absolutely bought without the proper financial pieces put in place to be able to make them solid investments. And I found myself on a 2-year journey of absolute every single day doing everything I could to make sure I produced enough income for my family so that we could continue to have the the lifestyle that we had already created, which was nothing extravagant, but I didn't want to go back to living in an apartment. I mean, by this time I've got a first daughter has arrived. I need to make sure that I am continuing to provide for my family the level that we have, throughout the past up to that point. So I've got this massive amount of stress on me. It took a lot of heart to heart, that getting vulnerable thing that I learned back in 2003 with Dan through my grocery business. I had to sit down and get vulnerable with my banks. I had to explain to all of my lenders exactly the scenario I was in and the exact plan I was going to take to get out of that scenario. Luckily for me, all of the local banking relationships worked very well with me. They all allowed me to do any restructuring I need to do. They allowed me to do any sales I needed to do. They allowed me to be able to negotiate what was a very difficult time. And at this time, I transitioned away from groceries into real estate. I looked up one day, and this $18 million sales company that I'd built could produce no more than $200,000 a year in sales. And it was all because I lost my focus. I created that 100%, but it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, eventually I was able to start my own real estate company here in Memphis, and then eventually join my father and brother at Memphis Invest as a partner with them to help grow Memphis Invest. They absorbed my company in. And all that happened, I look back on it today and I can say it was a great experience to go through. But it all happened because I lost my focus. Much of the way that REI Nation operates today is because of those experiences like what I had. I wasn't the only one experiencing that. Some of our other clients had the exact same experiences. We began to focus high level on proper renovations, high level on eliminating deferred maintenance. We began really focusing on making sure that the management that our clients received was at the highest level. That's why we brought it in-house, because you couldn't outsource management and expect it to be good. Certainly not the level that we wanted. So a lot of the way that REI Nation operates today was partly from my experiences, 2006 to 2009 timeframe, when I had to dig deep and work really hard because I had lost my focus. So look, for today, I almost lost my ass in real estate. That's kind of what today was going to be talking about, because I lost my focus. If you're like me, you're watching this today and you've got your own business out there, you're an entrepreneur, you're interested in real estate, the number one piece of advice I can give you is focus first on your highest and best use of your time, which is going to be your active ability to produce income, okay? Find and surround yourself with fantastic team members that can help you produce a passive income, whether it's real estate or anything else. For me, it's real estate. Find the best to help you create that passive income. And then when you have a plan that you want to put in place, that you're going to take your active income and produce a return passively over here, when you make your plan, don't let anybody knock you off of it. I promise, if you're an investor today, you are going to get more phone calls, more emails, more postcards than I ever received in my years as a real estate investor. You're going to be hammered left and right every single day with, I've got this new exciting opportunity. Stay focused. Stay focused. Do what you do best. Deal with the best. Don't let anybody knock you off your plan. Okay? Guys, I appreciate you joining me here today. I've got another great podcast that I'm going to be recording and bringing out to you soon. So I'm going to share how I got started originally, that first house. I want to share that with you guys. But also I'm going to share the number one tool we've used to raise more money than we ever dreamed of as beginning real estate investors, especially when we were passive. All right, I'm going to share that tool with you and how we go about putting it together, how you can use that tool for your own successful growth in your real estate business. Until then, guys, commit to the grind. We'll talk to you soon.